Hello, everyone, and welcome to PAEA September WebinART, Virtual Teaching Resources for Art Educators. Tonight, we will hear from Sarah Jefferis, an online art educator who will share tools and lesson ideas for virtual learning. Registered participants will receive a Google Form link via email after the event to fill out for their 1 hour of Act 48 credit. This webinar will be recorded and available at a later date on the PAEA website. Before we begin the webinar, we are asking participants to mute their microphones and keep their video off during the presentation. Those controls are located in the bottom left corner of their controls bar. We are also asking everyone to sign in on the chat roll. Please use the same name in which you registered for this event. The chat roll can be found along the bottom in the controls bar as well. Signing in will ensure that you receive the Act 48 link. You may also use the chat roll for questions. There will be a Q&A period after the presentation. Let's get this webinar rolling. Sarah, take it away.
Okay, great everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and just real quick before we get started, because the chat will get hidden from me when I present my screen, I'm just going to go ahead and put a link in the chat, but there also will be a QR code in the presentation if you would like it for later. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so welcome everyone. So today we're going to talk about virtual teaching resources for art educators. I feel this is a really important topic just because, you know, we're in the midst of our global pandemic, unfortunately, and it's a whole new world for a lot of brick and mortar teachers and also cyber teachers. We're seeing a lot of increased numbers. So having this planning and preparation is really a great resource, and also it's great that it's Labor Day weekend because hopefully some of you can jump on the computer tomorrow and use some of these resources to prepare. So my name is Sarah Jefferis. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Kutztown University. I majored mainly in crafts, in weaving and fine metals. I have also my master's in art education from Kutztown University. I have been a cyber teacher since 2017. Here I have a picture of our Christmas decorating contest. I chose to do the movie Home Alone. So it just shows a little bit of that office environment. It is very corporate sometimes, but we do have students come into the building when possible. And then I just have to mention, because she is here tonight, and some of the resources I'm sharing, she has graciously allowed me to share. We have Mrs. Kim Geller, is also an art teacher at my school. So Kim Geller and I, we share middle school and high school roles, and we are the dream team. So we are art teachers to anywhere from 130 to 300 middle school and high school students, and that's just one, like my numbers. So that can be anywhere from 150 to 300 throughout the year, and then same with Kim. We teach middle school art, photography, digital drawing, filmmaking, watercolor, and film appreciation. We also act as academic advisors to 20 to 30 students at a time, which means we are the point person for that family to contact for help with the cyber school. So we are going to have an opportunity, there is going to be a link coming out for you to ask questions. So while we're working through this presentation, if you have any wonderings, you can put them on there. For now, I'm just going to start with the basics in case some of the vocabulary is new to brick and mortar teachers. So we're going to talk about asynchronous and synchronous environments online. So in terms of this presentation, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm defining virtual education as an online school, a virtual school, e-school, cyber school, they're called many things, and it teaches students entirely or primarily online or through the internet. I just have to move my camera here real quick. So asynchronous versus synchronous learning. So synchronous learning is online or distance education that happens in real time. So that's like this, like Zoom. whereas asynchronous learning occurs through online channels without real-time interaction. Many hybrid learning models will include a blend of both. So our school that Kim and I teach at is a hybrid school. So a lot of it's asynchronous. We have a website that has our curriculum on it, but then we also teach live classes once a week, similar to Zoom, but we use a different platform. Oops, sorry about that. So I really enjoyed this quote because I thought it really kind of emphasizes how students feel when learning in the cyber environment. So you can't teach people everything they need to know. The best you can do is position them where they can find what they need to know when they need to know it. So it's all about leading the learner to the right resources. When you can't be in front of them, you have to make sure to organize yourself in a particular way to help them better help themselves. So just make sure to have that information out there for them, and we'll talk about the ways that you can do that. So some e-learning communication differences, I thought this was important to point out. So these are examples of the type of exchanges you will have in e-learning. So some exchanges will be content related. So that'll just be regular ask or answer a content related question, share information, express an idea or thought. Then there's the planning of tasks. So often teachers will still have to communicate with students about allocating tasks. There will also be the joint efforts in with your colleagues where you'll have to work together, review drafts, negotiate and resolve conflicts over the internet. Unfortunately, it's not like you can get together in person and deal with some of these issues. And then there's social support. So one of the type of communication that occurs is the companionship. You have to have emotional support in this type of environment for students. Sometimes you're the only face they're seeing that day, especially in regular cyber schools where the parents might be at work and they're home alone or with a sibling. Sometimes the only companionship they get throughout the day is their teacher. So that's a big thinking point. And then also the use of emoticons, that's a really big one. That's a total change. So you can use things like emoticons to express yourself. You're gonna see a lot of that with students. You have to provide support when things arise, like tech issues. If you're in the middle of class and there's kids yelling that something's not working, that's also another variable. And then talking about things other than classwork sometimes comes up. Some differences here when you would use each asynchronous versus synchronous. So asynchronous would be, you would use it when reflecting on complex issues. So when synchronous meetings cannot be scheduled because of work or family or other commitments, that's when you would use the asynchronous. And that would be something like an email or a Google Classroom setup. And then also, why would you use that? So students have more time to reflect because the sender does not expect an immediate answer. So that gives students that ability to, it's not a live class, they have time to actually do the work or reflect. How asynchronous learning is used, so you can use it as a means, or I'm sorry, how can you do it? It's email, discussion boards, blogs. Some examples are students are expected to reflect individually on course topics. They may be asked to maintain a blog. And then if we go over to synchronous learning, that is just like this, like Zoom. This is in the moment. You're discussing less complex issues. You might only have 40 minutes to an hour. It's also getting acquainted. You have to have that time for your opening and your closing, the common courtesies. Why synchronous learning is great? Because students become more committed and motivated, because a quick response is expected. So you'll have a little bit more engagement there. And then you can use things like video conferencing, instant messaging, chat, and complement with face-to-face meetings like Zoom. So also students are expected to work in groups, may be advised to use instant messaging. So Zoom would be the chat that they would use. So they might be expected to use chat. I'm not quite sure how Microsoft Teams is built if they have chat in different group rooms where you can put students into groups, but that would count as synchronous as well. It's all in the moment. So thinking ahead, I want to collaborate as we go here. So if you have a tablet device or a mobile phone, or if you want to open a different window on your computer, we are going to open a Padlet. Some of you might be familiar with Padlet. And you can either click the link that's in the chat, and I don't know if someone else can share that. Of course, I can't see my chat right now, but I did put the link in there, so you could always repaste it for me. Or you could also use the QR code. So I'll just give you a moment to do that, and it will be on the next screen as we move along. So what this Padlet is going to look like. So there is an area for Q&A, for question and answer. So just in case we don't have time or you think of a question later, you can open this up a day from now and pop in here and ask a question, and I can check it every once in a while. And if someone has a burning question about virtual art ed resources, this is your communication with me. So you can save this link. You will see a resource sharing spot, and I've already shared some resources with you that you can open afterwards. Wonderings, if you have any random wonderings that you feel don't quite fit in the Q&A, or if you have a comment, there's also a spot for comments. Oops, sorry about that. So why Padlet? So Padlet is really great. You can use it in class for live questions. So this could be either live or for something for later, like a link you send out an email. So you can do it for live questions, displaying student artwork. You can do student portfolios. So a student could have their own Padlet or their own column. That could be their portfolio. It could be an exit ticket for class, an icebreaker. You could use it for feedback from your parents. You could use it for feedback for colleagues, to be able to do some reflection as a teacher. You could use it as a thinking map, a classroom newsletter, or a brain break. The classroom newsletter, my school actually tried that for a while, because you can actually embed Padlets into websites. I'm not sure if you can do it into Google Classroom. I don't doubt that you can. I know that Google's very flexible, but they might have their own solution to Padlet. So that's why I'm wondering. But it's really great to embed, because then the students can keep coming back to it and they don't necessarily have to go to the website. So here's an example of how I've used Padlet. So here is where I would have it embedded in my class. This is what it looked like. Unfortunately, it didn't work out in the long term for our website, but when we, oh, I don't know why that happened. Let me move forward. There we go. So you can see this was an open forum for students to share their art. So often in the cyber environment, students aren't seeing each other's art. They have to have a place to share their art. In brick and mortar school, it would be maybe a bulletin board in the classroom, or they could simply lean over to their friend and say, hey, check out my cool drawing. They can't do that here. So this is a great way for them to share their work outside of class, because a lot of times you might want that face-to-face 45-minute class time on Zoom to be about the content. So if you would like them to reflect later, you can see here the students are reflecting in many ways, whether it's telling a story, whether it's just simply giving a heart to their to one of the artworks they like. So they might be too shy to share their work, but they might go and give a little heart symbol to one of their friends. And some of them are even, you can see Scarlett here, she says, this is the first time I have tried a realistic facial feature. So she's sharing a moment in her drawing life where she has discovered something and she's proud of it. And maybe her siblings next to her couldn't care less, but when she gets to have an outlet like this, it gives her a chance to get that feedback that she's really craving. Here's another example, but how I would use it in, let's say, a high school course. So in photography class, this was just an extra credit. We learned about Migrant Mother during class, the famous photograph. And so I wanted to kind of get an idea, sort of an exit ticket, but I didn't call it that, I left the last 20 minutes of class for them to fill this out because I wanted to check their understanding. And actually it told me a lot, whether it was they weren't paying attention or my lesson wasn't coming across the right way. Some of the students didn't quite get the right answers with this. So just some quick tips with Padlet, and again, you can watch this back later or take a screenshot. Just some important things to note. The reason I really love Padlet, it's pretty much the only website that I know of right now that actually has a profanity filter. So if you look down on the bottom here, let me see if I get my pointer, you can actually turn on a filter for profanity. So it'll just turn up if a student puts something inappropriate in there, it'll fill it in with a blank or stars. You also want to make sure that the attribution is turned on or off. So it can either be anonymous postings or students have to put their name. And also a tricky thing with Padlet is after you create the Padlet, when you go to share, then you can change privacy. You want to change the privacy to a private link, not a public link, because then you're going to have problems with possibly strangers getting into the Padlet. So you always want to make sure that's a private link and private Padlet. So let's take a step back and think about offline thinking. So we want to think about what are these students, and I'm sorry that's happening, I think it's my mouse. What are these students really going through at home and what is their environment? So a problem I see often in my school is if the student doesn't have internet for a few days, or in cyber school, sometimes servers might go down or things happen. So not everything can be digital. I could have come here and taught you a whole bunch of different websites where you could do digital drawing, but we want to give the students time off the computer. Art class might be their only chance to actually step away. And I have spoken to many students, and actually one that's now a colleague of mine. She ended up going to college to be a teacher and then coming to work at the school, the cyber school she went to. And she reflected with us saying she loved art class in cyber school because it was the only time that she actually could be tactile and touch materials and really work. So encourage students to set up a home studio space, which is a safe space for their supplies if they can. And this could look like, masking tape, masking off like a section of table, and that's their art space where they keep their work to keep it clean. Consider projects that get students to engage with their home environment and family, and also just involve the family altogether. You want to show that art is still important, even in the situations we have today. Creativity is a great outlet. So some offline thinking ideas, you could have students design a board game to play with their family members. When it comes to drawing assignments or portraits, even photography portraits, encourage students to use family members and pets as their models. Consider environment, so rural versus urban. Take student environment into account. What resources will students have access to? And I've run into this problem where I might tell students to do something with nature or go outside and take pictures of trees or something to that effect. I might give it as an example. And they say, well, I live in a city. I don't really have a park near me that I can go to. I don't have a backyard. So make sure to consider what students have in their environment. And then also recycling. Some of my favorite projects deal with incorporated recycled materials. So think about what students have in their environment that they can use to make collage or make sculpture. Nature, consider nature collage if they can get out. We do have fall coming up, so beautiful leaves will be falling. I think there was an example on the last slide of some options with stones and sticks and making collage on paper. You can have students identify shapes and patterns in nature. You want to encourage them to get up and move. Also encourage them to explore their world. So you want to have them maybe look for things in their home. I saw a great example online of students having to find a functional item in their kitchen and then describe why it's art. They have to make an argument for why the soup ladle is actually a piece of art. So that can be a really fun writing assignment. So here's an example. So this is actually Mrs. Geller's summer project she had done, and I helped her film it. So she was in front of the camera and she did a lesson on Andy Goldsworthy, and we used the iPad. We went outside into the park behind our school's building and we quickly filmed. I would say it probably took less than 30 minutes to film all the shots that we needed. And then we edited a small video to help kids understand ephemeral art and then how to make it and how to take a picture of it. And then also plein air drawing. This is a really fun one that we try to do as often as we can if the weather is nice. I thought this photo was hilarious because I could see someone really wanting to set this up. But you want to think about setting up outside with your laptop if you have like a back porch, a nice table, a nice backyard. And even if you live in the city, you could go out on your balcony and show students how to plein air draw. Invite them to sit outside or look out their window to draw what they see. And then alternatively, students could draw what they see while on a 360 field trip. So let's learn a little bit about field trips. So let's talk a little bit about virtual field trips. I know that sounds kind of silly, but there are so many cool resources and I couldn't fit all of them into this presentation. So I do have a document for you for when you're done this presentation so you can find out more information. So on Google Arts and Culture, I'm assuming a lot of schools are Google schools, even if they're on Microsoft or Apple computers. Most likely students have something like Gmail or Google Classroom these days. If you don't, you can still utilize these resources. So Google Arts and Culture is a great website. I'm sure some of you have even heard of it before, but they do have 360-degree tours and videos. So what you would do is send this link out to students, and this could be something that's asynchronous or synchronous. You could play it over your live class too. But this particular one is a video of a historic site, and there's actually a curator talking, and you're walking as if you're really the person, and you can spin the camera around as if you're really spinning your head around. So this is a really fun resource for times like these when people can't get outside and travel. And then museums. Museums are an amazing resource. They have had online content and cyber content for a long time. Two of my favorites, again, are Google Arts and Culture lessons. These are something I didn't see before. It might be new because of COVID-19, but if you look in the top right corner here, this lesson was having students express themselves, but through Google Sheets. So they would actually use the spreadsheet to create a artwork. And you can see here how they recreated this beautiful masterpiece, but with the little squares, and I can't think of the term right now, but it reminds me of the game they all play, and I can't think of the term right now. But the Met Kids is another great one. I have used this when there were students who needed an alternative lesson, whether they were a special ed student or it was a student who their parent maybe didn't agree with the content or something of a class, so this was like an alternative. And the Met actually has their whole museum laid out in a cartoon fashion, and you can click through whether it's by date, so you can explore the centuries, you can explore by type of art, and there's lessons, there's videos. It's very engaging. So I highly recommend somehow incorporating a scavenger hunt or something of the sort for your students. And then here are some resources that my school uses and encourages the teachers to use in their live labs. So this one's called Edpuzzle. So this one is where you choose a video and you give it your magic touch and track your students' comprehension. So you're basically, and I'll show you the platform in a minute, you're choosing a video. You can either choose it from YouTube, TED Talks, National Geographic, they have all kinds of resources. And then you can add questions to it, and the video actually pauses. So the student will see the video playing, it will pause, and a question will pop up. and they can no longer move on through the video without answering the question. I think there is a skip button that's optional. So they would choose content. You can also choose content from the curriculum library. There's plenty of teachers who've already created these videos, even from my school. I don't know if they're public from my school. I think mine might be, but I did one on 3D printing, and I'm pretty sure that's in the library for all to see. And then also a huge thing to mention is to watch videos all the way for appropriateness. And also any of the websites or technologies I'm mentioning, make sure to ask your admin or your tech department, because students might not be able to get to these links without permission. So here's an example of the Edpuzzle. So you can see here, this one's on color theory. And if you look, there is a, I don't know why my mouse keeps doing that, I'm so sorry. There is a button down here, and you can notice that it's paused. A question pops up about color theory. The student can either re-watch the segment, so it'll actually rewind to the segment that's about color theory. They can skip it, or they can answer and submit. And then there's Nearpod. Nearpod is really gaining, I believe Agora Cyber Charter School is actually working with Nearpod. They're their biggest customer in the state of Pennsylvania, and I saw some articles about it when I was researching this. But Nearpod is a really fun interactive lesson platform, and you can customize it so much. So all students can participate at the same time. All students can provide feedback to one another quickly. And I have examples of all of these in my resources that you have links to. So you will be able to see examples. So quiet students are more empowered to share their thinking, because there's a lot of different ways to get students to communicate with each other in this platform. You can maintain and even heighten engagement as well as participation. And teachers can quickly gauge all students' thoughts, feelings, and understanding of the topic being discussed. You, as a teacher, get real-time feedback on what the students are completing. So this has open-ended responses. It has options for drawing too. So students can actually draw on the board and submit, and then everyone can see each other's drawings. It has live polls, quizzes, collaboration boards. Here is a screenshot of the collaboration boards. You can see a spot where students can type in the bottom or add a picture and post. And then these, you also can moderate these so that, of course, students can't use any profanity or say anything that's irrelevant to class. You have to approve them before they pop up on the board. But this is a great way to foster communication. And then let's move into virtual art display. So this is always a big question. I'm not sure if everyone thinks about it. With COVID-19, you might just be thinking about how to get through the next week. But you are going to start seeing student work pile up. You're going to get those artworks. Kids might finish artworks a lot quicker. So one of the first lessons to teach is how to take pictures of artwork and how to change file names, because now students, their artwork isn't just a piece of paper. They have to learn how to share it with you so that you can grade it and give them feedback. So on the right-hand side, you can see an example. And again, I shared this resource. I shared a PDF presentation with instructions for a student on how to take good photos of their artwork. So there's different examples and pictures and things they can read about. Also, consider using a file naming convention. I know that sounds a little bit strict, but have students put their names somewhere in the artwork. And as a teacher, it honestly is so hard when, you know, Susie's mom calls up and says, did you get her artwork from last week? How are you going to find it in your mess of files? Hopefully your school has some type of system where they can submit and you can find it, whether it's a Google Classroom or the student has a portfolio. But if not, if that file's on your computer, you might want to have it have a last name, first name, and a lesson title. That is something you can teach middle school and high school students to do, is to change the file name. And it just helps you keep files organized, and then you can actually curate and grade the student artwork. So some ideas for creating virtual galleries. So this one is from eMaze. So we have used this. You can embed it. My school has used this just for students to see, not on a wide scale or anything. But we use this for many things. We use these galleries and emails in general for announcements, anything that we want the kids to see. It's free and has paid plans, so it depends. I think there's about 10 free emails that you get as a teacher sign up. And it's also a virtual reality gallery. So the way it works, it looks like a PowerPoint presentation to the person who's creating it, sort of like Prezi, if you know what Prezi is. And you would put in the student's artwork, and then as you move through the content, it actually is almost like a camera moving you through the gallery to the next wall. So it's very user-friendly. It's easy for the teachers to quickly just drag and drop photos, and it's easy for the students and parents to engage with it. And it also embeds into most sites, which is really important. And then Google Slides. So Google Slides is a really fun one. Kim Geller actually made this one. We were experimenting with interactive galleries. So the way this works is you're hyperlinking images so the gallery is interactive. So if you look at the page, this is one slide of Google Slide, and it's just a photograph of a gallery wall. And then you insert the student's artwork and size them correctly to fit on the wall. And then each of those images can become a hyperlink to a page later in the slideshow presentation. That's the student's full art. So basically the instructions say to the viewer, oh, click on a student's artwork to see it closer up. And then there's also other buttons that say go back, previous room, next room, to help the user get back to the beginning. So you really feel like it's an interactive experience. And it's also secure. So something to think about with things like emails, depending on how strict your school is, or your admin, or your principal, or your department head, you might have to ask them to use certain websites, especially when uploading student artwork, because you don't want anything in the public so that they could take, attributions. So yes, Google Slides is secure. That's something that would stay in Google Classroom. And then the NAEA resources. This is super important because it just came out recently and I saw it in my email. So they have something called the Remote Learning Toolkit. And I saw so many great ideas. As you can see here, it says that basically a whole bunch of NAEA division and members at large have collected, curated, and shared strategies, approaches, lessons, units, and tools to support teachers as we're faced with the challenges of the 2021 school year. So I highly, highly recommend checking that out. It does go out in an email, and it's also in PDF format. So some quick tools for teachers. And I'm sorry if I'm going through this really fast. You can always take screenshots. It's just a lot to put in one hour, as we know. I thought it was important to mention your first days of school, you want to set class expectations. So just like you would in brick and mortar setting, there are certain ways that synchronous learning, there are certain tools that you need. So for example, you want to use the chat to check for understanding. So some teachers like to use just true false, like T and F for elementary students. They can easily do T, F, T, F. They can type that out. Use emoticons. So you could teach students how to raise their hand with a hand emoji, give a thumb up, thumbs down. They could use the rabbit if they feel like you're going too slow. They could use the snail to show you to go at a slower pace. There's also the check mark you can use to check for understanding, and then also an X for them to say, wait, you need to stop and go back. Also teach constructive criticism. Now that class is an open platform where everyone can just type what they want, you probably can turn off the chat, depends on what platform you're using, but you don't want to necessarily silence kids and filter them, but you want to let them know when is the time to type and what is the correct thing to type. So you want to teach them about constructive criticism. If they have something to say about a class member's artwork, just like in brick and mortar and in in-person learning, they have to do it delicately and not hurt anyone's feelings. And then you can adapt Think, Pair, and Share by using breakout rooms. So again, depending on the program you're using, consider learning about breakout rooms where you can section off students into groups so that they can actually do Think, Pair, Share type activities through synchronous learning. And then some really cool tools I've come across. One is called Mote. I don't use this myself, but if I had Google Classroom, I would use it in a heartbeat. So again, ask your admin about this, but it is a Google Chrome extension, and it's a friendlier way to comment on documents, slides, images, anything that's Google. You can add 60-second voice notes, and it actually dictates what you're saying. So you can press the record button. It'll listen to what you're saying and actually dictate it in text, and it'll make a recording. Again, this most likely needs admin approval because if students, I don't know if students would have access to it, but you just want to make sure like where are those files going, who owns Mote. But it seems like it's a pretty popular educational resource. So Mote may be a great solution and fit for you if you use Google Classroom, Google Docs, Google Slides. If students have a Chromebook, Mac, or PC, it works. If students use Chromebooks or laptops with a Chrome browser installed, so it is an app on the browser. It won't be a great solution if you mainly use Microsoft Teams and MS Office applications, and if your students mainly use iOS or Android devices, including iPads or iPhones or Android tablets, they won't work on tablets. Another really fun thing, or at least I think it's fun, and I know Kim Geller thinks it's fun too, is mail merge. So Google has a lot of options. There are so many different ones. I would recommend maybe asking your admin or tech team, maybe they actually use something similar to this for when they email groups of people and parents already. But basically what you can do is it's just an extension on Google, and it connects your email to a Google Sheet, and it makes it integrated. So you can actually use variable fields, and you can see the example here. You can use that in the email subject, and then you have a separate document, and I think I have, oh, I didn't put that in there, but that's okay, but it's a separate Google Sheets document where you put all the students' first names, all the students' last names, and you can make endless columns of fill in the gaps. And then all you have to do is use the sheets, and it'll connect with your Gmail and send personalized emails. And this will help get students' attention. Of course, they're not going to see an email that looks like it's to everybody, but they're going to have hundreds of email. And if they see, "Hi, Mackenzie, how are you doing today?" and it seems very personal, they're really going to pay attention to it. So some Google tricks I like to use to save time, the schedule button in Gmail. So every Gmail account has a button, especially if you have I think sometimes they ask you to like use the newer Gmail. There's a button next to the send button, and it's called Schedule Send. So this means you can write an email on Friday night that you need to send at 7 a.m. on Monday morning, but maybe you want to sleep in a little bit before your first class. So you can schedule that to send Sunday night, Monday morning, whenever you want, so you don't have to think about it and you can prep ahead. Also, Google Keep, that has totally changed in the past year. Google Keep is amazing. You can add images, audio, text, drawings. They're all color coded. Of course, teachers love that, as it says here. So definitely consider using Google Keep just to keep tabs on communications with parents, keep notes for yourself so that you don't have actual sticky notes all over your desk. Force copy. This is important when sharing links with students. Some students don't know how to make a copy of a document. This takes that instruction out of the way. So all you have to do is replace the end of your Google Doc link with the word copy. So usually it says sharing or edit. You just put the word copy, it'll actually force a copy. So when they click on it, it'll just say make a copy. Makes it really simple. And I think that I also want to mention Slides Carnival. That's where I got this beautiful template. So Slides Carnival is a website, and you can download free Google slide presentations, and they integrate right into Google Slides. Again, it's all free. They're beautiful presentations and they're ready to use. They also come with all the little emoticons and symbols that you can add into your presentation to make them more engaging. So most importantly, consider that students will be getting many communications throughout the week and try to consolidate information. That's one of my biggest takeaways to give to you. Students are getting so many emails, hundreds, some of them might even have hundreds of emails, especially if they just start piling up. It might get overwhelming. So try to consolidate information by using like Google Classroom or some type of website or a blog where you can put information for students to find. And then also choose 1 or 2 tools to master from this presentation and stick to them. Don't try everything because then you'll just get overwhelmed and it's too much to learn. But if you have one trick up your sleeve for when school starts, the students will remember and be able to engage and they'll learn it. Because it'll just be more for them to learn if you try Nearpod and Flipgrid and all the different like Padlet, everything you saw today. It might be a little too much for them. And thank you. So that's all I have for tonight. And I just want to mention that the Padlet is a place for questions. So if you do have questions or you need to see the credits of this presentation, you want to make sure to look for the resources in the Padlet. And a reminder that some of the greatest teachers of all time taught virtually. I think that's a great reminder for all of us. And thank you very much. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Anyone have questions?
Yep, and we do have definitely time for questions. So you may use the chat roll to type in any questions or comments you may have for our presenter. You may also unmute yourself and ask your question live. It is your choice to leave your video off or turn it on at this time. We are leaving it up to you to decide on your level of privacy, as the recording will be housed on the PAEA website. And Sarah, I think there were 1 or 2 questions in the chat then, if you have access to that.
Perfect. Yes, I do.
I think around 7:31 on the timeline is where I saw the first 1 or 2 questions come through.
Yep. So I see Erica says, I teach K through 2nd. All of my students will have Chromebooks. Any suggestions for teaching them to take a picture with a Chromebook? That's a great point. So the Chromebook should have a camera at the top, just like a Mac or any laptop. And what I would suggest, let me see if I have my little artwork here. So for that age, most likely their parents probably going to help them. But I would say for a Chromebook, I'm not sure if they have like a photo. Do they have some type of photo application on Chromebook? Does anyone know? Okay, so if they have like a photo application or a webcam application, I know on Mac it's called Photo Booth. Typically what our students do before we had iPads, they would actually just have proper lighting. We would teach them about lighting, and we would even turn on our webcam and like go in front of a bright window and show them how the bright window overexposes the art. So we try to teach them to not overexpose the art, have proper lighting, and then just hold the edges of their paper without their fingers in it and just take a picture like this. And often you'll see their little face peek around because they have to press a button to take the picture. So that's really the suggestion I have for that. Definitely having a parent help would be nice. And let's see what else here. My students have our high school art. Oh, you're on Canvas. Okay, great. You're having elementary students take a selfie with their artwork so that I see who made the artwork. That's a really good idea. I think it's good to have a selfie with it. And they know what a selfie is. So they understand that they have to have their face and then like the item in it, they lean back, they know. They can submit it via Google Classroom. I think Google is gonna be a really big resource for people this year. I did have some of you, if you interacted with the Google or the Padlet, I asked if you were using Google Classroom, and it looks like a lot of you are. I'd be surprised if people weren't, because I don't know how else you would be sending files and things to your students. Anyone have any other questions for me? I'm hoping that Labor Day gives you a lot of time to be able to learn some of these techniques. I unfortunately never used Canvas. I would assume Google has a lot of embed technology. So pretty much all of their, like their sheets, their slides application, there's even a drawing application. A lot of times there's a file embed or file share, and you can like embed places. Oh, and there's some people sharing YouTube videos. Good. Hybrid learning where kids are full virtual, others hybrid. So that's, I think that's a really interesting topic. I have heard some teachers talk about how they're hybrid. I've had some personal friends from college reach out and they're panicking because they don't understand how some are going to be hybrid, some aren't. And honestly, I feel like some schools everyone is stretched a bit thin. And I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work, but I know that as long as we keep communication open, and also just consider the overwhelming part of, I keep going back to the communications. Imagine all the emails like parents would get in one Monday morning, or the kids getting on their Google Monday morning and having all these emails from their teachers planning things, or if you send stuff out without it being ready and then there's even more emails, it's going to be over a lot of information for them. So having it in one place, I think, is the best. And for full virtual or hybrid in the same. Now, when you say full virtual or hybrid, does that mean some are actually going in the classroom? So like you're in the classroom with some, and then some are still at home. Okay, yeah, Nearpod actually would be perfect for that, because you can present in the classroom, but then students at home can sign in with their Nearpod code, and they can also interact with the students that are in the classroom live. So Nearpod's really neat that way. All they have to do is sign in, the teacher sees one view, the students see another, and it's just an interactive lesson that the teacher controls the pace of. You can also do student pace and send out a separate link so that students can do it later on their own time. Okay, so they watch a screen simultaneously. Live streaming, okay. Yeah, that's really tricky. I know that one thing I had a lot of questions about with, and this was a really hard presentation to put together, because I can't imagine, I have to think back to like my student teaching days when I was teaching in the classroom and think about what you guys really need, you know? It's really tricky to kind of switch my brain over and think like, whoa, what, the biggest thing for me is just the admin support. Everyone's stretched so thin. You really have to rely like on your other teachers in your department to kind of like share resources. And also just the numbers. I can imagine the student numbers and the tech difficulties. I know that's going to be really tricky, but you just take it one day at a time. That's why I feel like asynchronous really works for me, because if you have all that information somewhere, if a student is upset that they don't have internet for a few hours or something happens, it can make them feel better to know, don't worry, you didn't miss out on anything. Everything's on my classroom page, everything's on Canvas. Your parents can go over it with you later, or I'll record a video. It'll have a video of me talking to you about this assignment. So as long as you have those resources, videos, face-to-face video time for students who might not be able to do the live class portion, and maybe they missed out for some reason, it'd be great just to have those resources in one spot. Okay, great. Now I want to really highlight the document that I had shared too. I know we only have like 10 minutes left, but I did share the virtual resources document, and I will be updating that as I think of things. And you can also ask questions on the Padlet if you get stuck and you say, oh, what is a great resource for this? I can always add that to the document. So it's just a living document that I can keep changing. So make sure you take a look at that. There's some special ed tips there of how to provide different strategies for your like Canvas class, like what can you do to like chunk information or number directions, things that'll make special ed, IEPs, everything, you know, be cohesive. Okay, great. I think that's all we have for questions. Thank you so much for joining me, and good luck, everyone. If anyone has ideas for things that they'd want to learn about, I'm more than happy to do these types of presentations again. If we want to kind of hone in on one resource like Nearpod, and we can go through step-by-step how to do those. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, I'm glad that you said you'd be willing to offer more, because, you know, we will definitely keep that in mind as we go through, and, you know, this becomes, you know, easy for some of us and a little bit more overwhelming for others. And we might be calling on you again for more help. So that's
yes,
awesome.
definitely.
Awesome.
Keep me in mind.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for so much great information. And we really hope that everyone enjoyed their time with us tonight. Please make sure that you have signed in on the chat roll to verify your participation in tonight's webinar. We are not sure yet if there will be an October webinar, since we are hosting the PAEA virtual conference October 16th and 17th. And I am going to put the link in the chat box for the conference page on our website, so it is there now, so feel free to copy that link. Friday, October 16th, we'll kick off with the PAEA General Membership Meeting, followed by the first keynote session with Nate Heck of Art Rages with Nate, so that should be fun. And I believe the rest of the conference program should go up on the website over the next few days, but I've seen it and there is so much going on throughout the 17th, so it's going to be a great lineup. And then just remember that all other registration links for other PAEA sponsored events are also available on the PAEA website calendar, the PAEA Facebook pages, and through email from me, PAEA's Director of Programming, or of course your division or region reps. And then just remember to check your email for the Act 48 link coming either later this evening or tomorrow morning. So unless anybody else has any other questions, and I do see someone ask where you sign in, just right there in the chat, that's fine. It does give me a copy of the chat so I can double check attendance for the Act 48 link. So unless there's any other questions, comments, concerns, then that's a wrap. Good night, everyone.
Have a great night. Thanks again, Jill.
Goodbye.